Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing very well. I just watched Paradise. Let's talk about it. So Paradise was created by Dan Fogelman, the mind behind one of the best shows of the last decade, This Is Us. And here for Paradise, he actually returns to collaborate once again with one of the greatest actors that This Is Us brought us, and that is, of course, Sterling K. Brown. Now, going into this series, I didn't know anything about it. I literally did not know anything about this show. All I knew was three things, okay? I knew, first of all, that Sterling K. Brown was in it, okay? Because I saw it advertised all over the city of London with Sterling K. Brown's face right smack bang in the middle of the poster. So that's the first thing that I knew. The second thing that I knew is that Dan Fogelman was returning to collaborate with Sterling K. Brown again. And after the excellence that was This Is Us, I knew something special could happen there, and that was confirmed by the third thing, which was when I saw that this show was getting positive reviews. So after those three things were confirmed, I said, say less, I will be watching. I will be there every Tuesday. And guys, I am so glad that I did, because tell me why this show is the best thing on TV right now. Tell me why this show ended up being the best thing that 2025 has produced so far. I loved Paradise, but I'm getting way ahead of myself. Before I dive into my thoughts on the first season of the show, yes, it has been confirmed that there will be a season 2, and thank God for that, because imagine if we were left hanging after that finale. But before we dive into my thoughts, let's dive into the story itself. So here the setup is pretty simple on the surface of things. We start off with Sterling K. Brown's Xavier, who is the head of the Secret Service for the former president of the United States, who's portrayed by James Marsden. And Cal is living this pretty chill, pretty comfortable life in this affluent suburban area where we see all of these bright blue, cloudless skies and these green, bushy trees, these perfect lawns, and these beautiful white houses. All is looking so perfect and so neat and tidy, just like a typical affluent American suburban area that you would expect. But wait, there is a huge revelation right at the beginning of the first episode, because James Marsden's Cal has been murdered. The former president of the United States has been murdered under Xavier's watch, and so we are immediately thrust into what seems to be a pretty typical political thriller slash whodunit murder mystery. And that would have been fine, honestly. I was along for the ride. Like I said, I'm a huge Sterling K. Brown fan, so the fact that he was front and center in this cast list, the fact that the show was centered on his character, I knew he would be doing the actoring, because that man doesn't know how to do a bad job ever. So I knew I was in for a great time regardless. Like, if we were going to go through this path, I was more than happy to go along for the ride. But you see, the thing is, this series wasn't just content with doing that. No, this series wasn't just content with being typical and the usual same old that we have seen quite a few times at this point. No. This series said, hold on, because I'm gonna pull an Invincible. I'm gonna do a whole reverse card situation, and just when you think you figured it all out, I'm gonna throw a banger, a plot twist in the middle of this whole thing. But it is in fact revealed at the end of the very first episode that this seemingly typical idyllic American suburbia isn't actually a real place. It is a manufactured bunker. It is essentially a bunker type city that has been created underneath a mountain in like Colorado or somewhere. And that is because on top, on the surface of the earth, we've had a whole natural disaster that has taken place and wiped out all life on the planet, or so people believe up until a point. But yes, this is a whole post-apocalyptic situation that I never saw coming when watching the first 2/3 of the series, and that was such a shocking but effective plot twist at the very beginning of the show that took us on a completely different journey that we thought we were going on. But boy, was it a hell of a journey. This series was absolutely incredible from start to finish, and it pulled off this plot twist as well as the many other twists and turns that came along with it brilliantly. Now, like I said, this series took us on an incredible roller coaster ride, and I'm not just going to sit here and rehash each and every plot twist that season 1 had. So instead, I'll give my overall thoughts on the show and the story before diving into the characters. And in terms of my thoughts, I mean, I've already said I'm overwhelmingly impressed and pleasantly surprised by the journey that this series took us on. The series was so brilliantly written that I was engaged from start to finish. Instead of, who killed the president being the one and main question that is asked throughout the season, we get a whole bunch of other questions like, how did they end up down here? Who is the architect behind this mythical, magical paradise underneath this mountain? And what was the disaster that led to everyone having to evacuate in the first place? All of these interesting questions pop out of this plot twist, and it makes for such an engaging season of television. As I said, this is easily one of, if not the very best series to come out of 2025 so far, although to be fair, it's very early in the year, but the other shows are gonna have a tough time topping this, honestly. Emmys to the Television Academy. Listen, I will be delivering several messages to the Television Academy throughout this review, especially in the acting categories, okay? But this is my first plea to the Television Academy. You best have watched this series by the time that voting comes around. You best have watched this series and re-watched this series by the time that voting comes around, because if I see a lack of this show in the list of nominations, I will not be held responsible for my actions. Television Academy, you best have gotten it right. That's all I'll say at this point. But it wasn't just the strong writing that really held up this series. It was also the production value. From the very first episode, from the very first scene, to be honest, I could tell that we were working with a different production team. I could tell that we were working with a different flavor of production. It was definitely elevated. It felt expensive. It felt like it had that texture, the kind of texture that melds together traditional high-class network television that we're used to get, the likes of which we saw from Shondaland, right? With Scandal and How to Get Away with Murder, but also meshing in some of the prestige television that we have gotten from the streaming era as well. This series feels like a really cool hybrid of both. And from the very first episode, I could tell that we were dealing with a different breed of television, and that's what got me hooked as well, is the fact that I could see the quality which is missing from not just TV shows these days, but also from films. Tell me why this show felt and looked more cinematic than a lot of films, Marvel, that we've been getting in cinemas, actual theatrical releases. So that was another thing that really impressed me, the fact that the cast and crew clearly dedicated themselves into making sure that this series felt and looked rich and expensive and elevated. And I think that elevated production really did justice to the high concept elevator pitch of the show. Now, this series did a brilliant job of being engaging and enrapturing and actually quite addictive from start to finish, which was crucial considering the fact that it was a weekly release. This became a show that I was looking forward to week after week. I don't know what's going to replace it now. Oh, actually, I do. Oh, Disney Plus and your programming, I do know what's going to replace it now, Daredevil. But I'm not gonna lie, even with Daredevil swooping in to save my TV schedule, I still am going to miss this weekly drop because it was just so enrapturing week after week. I think it was really impressive that pretty much each of the episodes were as brilliant as the last, although I will say there was one episode that shone brighter than all the others. And funnily enough, it was episode 7. Episode 7 that dove into the backstory, that brought us, years back into that moment where the end of the world was nigh, where we saw this natural disaster, this tsunami that rocked the entire world play out right before our very eyes. That entire episode was so brilliantly executed. I mean, I'm talking everyone was locked in. The camera people, the director, the producer, the writers, and the actors, of course. We'll talk about the actors in a second. Every single person was locked the F in during the shooting for episode 7, and it was an immaculate hour of television. Now, I've said this quite a few times actually over the last few years because we have gotten some pretty impressive episodes, like confined episodes of television. Damn, I definitely need to do a video talking about this somehow, but we'll just add another one to the list because episode 7 was just a feat. It was truly an incredible accomplishment, and it's hilarious that it is in episode 7 because we have seen quite a few episode 7s in various shows do this, including more recently Severance season 2 episode 7, but that's a discussion for a whole other day. Before we get into the characters and brilliant performances in this series, just to round out the review and look at all sides of things, as great as I found the production and writing to be on the show, I did have a couple of nitpicks here and there. If I was going to be strict, I would say that finale felt like it was holding back just a little bit, and I understand why. It's because they've already confirmed that there's going to be a season 2 and they want to leave some story for that season, but considering the fact that the first episode just came out with a bang and it was so incredible and it just gave us everything, it did kind of give us whiplash when all of a sudden the finale felt like it was holding back. It didn't want to reveal too much about Sinatra, for instance, who was such a big player throughout the season but ended up kind of taking a back seat in the final episode, which felt a bit strange, and it didn't want to reveal too much about Xavier's wife and her location because that's going to be set up and established in the second season. So it definitely felt like they gave us tons and many questions to ask and many theories to come up with throughout the season, only for them to kind of pull back in the final episode and say, nope, we're not going to talk about this for now. You just like pause and ruminate on these little crumbs that we're going to give you for now, but in season 2 is when we're going to dive into the rest. And it felt a little bit unfair. Maybe I'm just being greedy, but I wanted a few more questions and a few more crumbs for the season finale. And also a couple of other technical things that kind of put a ding on the almost perfect production of this series. First of all, the lighting. The lighting and cinematography situation, particularly when it came to lighting Sterling K. Brown. Sterling K. Brown is a stunning dark-skinned man who does not need to be in blue lighting. Hollywood, listen, okay? Dark skin looks incredible alongside many different colors. I mean, hello, I'm proof of this. Have you seen my channel? Dark skin looks amazing with many different colors, but us black folks don't need to be lit with blue lighting. It's never going to do us justice. Please stop doing that, Hollywood. And this series made that error many times. Sterling K. Brown would have benefited from more warm lighting. I understand why they did it thematically, because they were kind of bouncing back and forth in different timelines, flashbacks and all of that, and the lighting was a big indicator of when and where the scenes were taking place. But just looking at it from a technical angle, it just wasn't doing him favors when he had that blue lighting, because it made him look kind kind of grey and ashy, and I know Sterling K. Brown isn't actually looking like that on set. Please, let's be for real. So if you could just fix that lighting, okay, that would be solid, that would be great and appreciated. And second technical-ish thing was the music. Now, it was only at the end that we finally got like the reasoning behind the somewhat random and on the nose soundtrack that we heard throughout the season, and it made it more forgivable, you know, less egregious. And when we got the explanation that Cal was creating a mixtape for his son of the corny music that he liked to listen to when he was younger. This is music that I'm familiar with, even though I am significantly younger than Cal. So I was a bit like, okay, you know, his son was acting a bit crazy, talking about this music as corny and whatnot. I was like, please settle down. This is Phil Collins. Shut up, Jeremy. Anyways, so we got the explanation at the end, but still, like throughout the series, and we got the very obvious needle drops, it did kind of make me roll my eyes just a little bit, like, okay, here we go. Especially because they didn't even fork out Disney didn't even fork out the money for the original versions, and instead got these airy, you know, breathy whisper singing covers for most of these songs, which I really just didn't appreciate. It was definitely giving CW circa 2012, so like we didn't need that. We didn't need that. It kind of cheapened the production just a little bit, even though we did get that explanation at the end that kind of made it make more sense. But okay, that's enough critical thinking. Now it's time for me to go ham on these characters. Starting us off with Sterling K. Brown as Xavier. Now, Xavier is the head of the Secret Service for the president, as I said. But earlier, I said that Cal was the former president of the United States. But it's revealed that he is actually, in fact, the current president of the underground paradise that is what's left of the United States as well. So it's an even bigger deal that he was murdered at the beginning of this series, especially on Xavier's watch. Now, at the beginning, they tried to go down this angle of, is it Xavier that did it? But that's quickly dispelled because Xavier risked his own life for the president previously. He was shot at by someone who seemed irrelevant but became very relevant at the end, and so he already proved his loyalty to Cal, so that theory was brushed away pretty quickly, which was nice because it meant that we could focus on Xavier's investigation into what was actually happening. Xavier as a character was just brilliant. Like, he was so great to follow along this journey. He was proficient and good at his job, so he wasn't making too many stupid mistakes throughout the series. And also, one of the many things that this series did really, really well was take the time to establish these really deep connections between these characters, especially in the case of Xavier and Cal, who had a somewhat complicated but really wonderful friendship, especially before shit went down. And so you were kind of rooting for them, even though things were a little bit off at times. You were just like, man, like you could see how these guys connected, how Cal wanted to kind of break through Xavier's cold and professional exterior and just get to know him a little bit better. And then over the years that kind of happened, but then that regressed after the end of the world. But that dynamic was just so brilliant and very well explored in terms of the story, but also in terms of the on-screen chemistry between Sterling K. Brown and James Marsden. And that just helped get us even more invested in Xavier's investigation for who killed his friend slash boss. Now, I said that Xavier was very proficient and good at his job and didn't make too many stupid mistakes, but there were a few stupid mistakes along the way that he did make. First of all, sleeping with that psychologist slash therapist that was helping Sinatra, bad call, literally bad call and unnecessary, and felt a little bit out of character, if I'm being honest. So didn't love that development. Also, the fact that the house was bugged and Sinatra was watching the whole thing with a bag of popcorn, like, yeah, you fall for that honey trap. Embarrassing. Not his best moment. And secondly, and this second mistake is even more egregious and one that he made before we even landed in this hellscape, and that was not stopping his wife from going to Atlanta. Xavier, come here. Sit down. We need to talk. And I need to look you dead in the eyes. What were you thinking? I don't want to hear the excuses. I don't want to hear the excuses. And guess what? I don't even want to hear you blame Cal, because after episode 7 revealed what it revealed, I actually saw things from Cal's perspective. Not gonna lie, like, oh, I actually saw things from Cal's perspective, because what else did you want him to do? He actually tried to do everything in his power to get your wife with you and the kids, but you had failed already, so there was nothing that he could do. He couldn't reveal all of the plans of what was going on. That was all messed up, by the way, but we'll talk about that in Cal's section. He couldn't reveal all of the plans to you, but he made it very clear that this was very serious, and the fact that they had a whole task force on this thing meant that this was serious stuff happening. You had an inkling of the severity of the situation. And so if the president tells you, Xavier, don't let your wife go to Atlanta, do you know what you need to do? You need to glue her ass to the sofa, actually. You need to super glue her ass to the sofa and not let her leave. I don't want to hear this, oh, she's an independent woman. Oh, she's an independent, strong black woman. I literally don't want to hear it. You need to strap her to the sofa and not let her go anywhere, because it is so serious right now. Because it is so, you need to hit her with one of those looks like, babe, no, not this time. Babe, not this time. Like, he needed to try harder. The fact that he just let her walk out that door, he was like, oh, she's a sassy black woman, she's not gonna listen to me. Bruh, this was the time to put your whole 10 toes down, because you could not have let her leave. Like, he needed to try so much harder. It wasn't a case of like disrespecting her, blah, blah, blah. No, the feminism isn't here right now. Feminism isn't knocking at the door right now. Doom is, okay? The end of the world is looking at the door. He needed to step up and stop her from leaving the house, dead ass. So that was Xavier's biggest issue. That was the biggest mistake that he made. But you know, fine. The story needed him to have done this, because otherwise he wouldn't be going on an adventure to go find his wife in season 2. Now, I had an observation, well, my brother had an observation about this, where we felt like we were getting deja vu just a little bit from this turn of events. And we were like, where have we seen this before? Where have we seen an exceptional first season that is set in a post-apocalyptic world, in a very confined space, and all of a sudden the main character pops outside to see what's above ground and if there are any real survivors of the apocalypse? We have seen this before. Where have it? Oh yeah, Silo. Oh yeah, this is very much giving Silo season 1 vibes. Now, the shows aren't exactly the same. I don't mention it to compare Silo directly to Paradise. I mention it because, as someone who bothered to tune in to season 2 of Silo, I'm a little bit worried about this turn of events for Paradise. Not gonna lie, Silo to me was a little bit of a slog. It was really hard when Juliet left the Silo and went on her own independent adventure to another Silo. It wasn't as investing and engaging as I thought it was going to be going into season 2, and so I'm a little bit worried that we will lose some of that momentum with Paradise as well. But I know that they're very different shows and there are very different things going on here. Hopefully we will get a really investing and interesting story as we see Xavier go out into the real world to see what's become of it. But I just, wanted to give you guys a heads up that I've seen some of these things before, and they didn't necessarily turn out to be great. But big ups to Dan Fogelman and team. I have hope and faith in you guys that you will turn out something great, and at the very least it's going to be brilliantly acted by Mr. Sterling K. Brown, who, second message to the Television Academy, will need to be nominated for an Emmy this year. You know that, right? Like, he will need to be, he will need to be nominated for an Emmy this year. That's not negotiable. That's not something that we need to discuss. It's just something that you need to write down on that piece of paper, post haste. Okay, so now moving on to Cal. Moving on to Cal, who's portrayed by the one, the only James Marsden, aka the father of all of your favorite CGI animal characters, especially Sonic. But yeah, James Marsden, you know, he's been working for ages actually. He's been in Hollywood working, doing the groundwork for a very, very long time. But I'm so happy to see him here in this project, especially because it is so good and so acclaimed. And maybe he'll get a little cheeky little Emmy shout out too, because honestly, he was doing great work here as well. But he was largely in the background because his character is, of course, the center of this murder mystery. Cal being taken out very early on in the season, and we only got to see a lot more of him through flashbacks in the past. But Cal is a really complicated character, but somehow still really likable because that's just James Marsden's charisma, duh. But he is basically the son of an incredibly rich, wealthy with a H, wealthy white man who has a lot of power. And Cal is one of those guys that like didn't really want to do anything too high profile. He just wanted to kind of make a life for himself and go to, like, I don't know, what was it, Indiana somewhere, you know, somewhere to just kind of do his thing and own a farm or something. And his dad was like, absolutely not. His dad was like, over my dead, deceased, decaying body will I allow my son to do that. Not because he like adores his son or cares about him and what he wants or blah blah blah, wants the best for him, no, but because his family has a reputation to uphold and he expects his son to go on to do great things with that family name and reputation, and so he won't allow him to live out a life in the farm or whatever the hell Cal wanted for his own life. And so Cal ends up the senator of some random place that apparently, according to his father, even a donkey could have won in that place, and eventually becomes the president of the United States. And he seems to be relatively popular, at least personality wise, but unfortunately this relatively young and popular and charismatic president ends up being the president at the time where the world ends. Ooh. And so we see Cal have to make some really tough, intense decisions, even by any world leader's standards. And some of those decisions are honestly reprehensible. Like, some of those decisions are just crazy, because this is a story about class, essentially. This is a story about a class war in reality. We'll talk more about that when we get to Sinatra, but it's a story about the wealthy and the powerful, the billionaires and the people who are holding and hoarding all of the world's wealth, taking control during a time where there is so much helplessness, where everything is literally ending. They had all of the power, they had all of the knowledge of what was to come, and they used it to benefit themselves and themselves alone. And gee, if only this story would be relevant to today's society. Like, oh, so essentially Cal becomes the spokesperson for the elite, and he is, at least on paper, in charge of an extremely secret operation that requires the building of an entire city, an entire civilization underneath this mountain in Colorado, that will select the very few, you know, the people in the upper echelons of society who have the money, who have the resources and the power to save themselves. They will get to have this safe haven once the world ends and is wiped out by this natural disaster, which they knew about for many, many years before the public was even told. And oh, the way that the public was told, I mean, this is what we see play out in episode 7. You get this chaotic sequence where Cal and all of the leaders and the people on the list get to escape. Meanwhile, you have people being told to stay put and to protect the president and the elite as they make their escape. And the people who aren't on the list are just supposed to wait it out until they die, I guess. Like, it was just so absurd, but so gripping and engaging because it felt authentic. It felt real. Like, this is the type of shit that would 100% happen in real life if we were in this scenario. And that's just what hooked me. That's what gagged me throughout the entirety of episode 7. And James Marsden gave an incredible performance during that episode. Oh, just amazing. And Cal emerged as this, you know, really complicated, multifaceted character who ultimately you kind of want to root for until you remember that he is one of the elite. And as guilty as he feels, as bad as he feels about his role in this heinous plot, it doesn't change the fact that he has so much blood on his hands. And you can't help but ask the question, could he have done something different to save more people from this disaster? But President Cal isn't the only one whose hands are dripping with blood, because in comes Sinatra. In comes Sinatra, aka Samantha. Samantha is a tech billionaire. Samantha is a tech billionaire. This is all fictional, guys. Like, this is just TV. We're just having fun. Samantha is a tech billionaire with too much power, too much money, and too much time in her hands, clearly. She suffered a huge loss when her son passed away unexpectedly. And ever since then, she has been sort of really like hyper protective and paranoid and traumatized by that loss. And that combines with, again, the wealth and the power that she has and the knowledge that the world is coming to an end pretty soon, meant that she was on a one-woman mission to create the paradise, to create this underground bunker that would protect only the elites. And in her mind, she's doing humanity a favor by, you know, selecting an elite group of people who will survive the end of the world. But ultimately, this just comes down to hubris and ego and selfishness and a hugely inflated sense of importance and superiority, which is backed by the deference that people pay her because she is so rich and powerful. So again, like, this is entirely fictional, definitely can't be related to what's happening in the real world. Like, I really don't even see any parallels at all, if I'm being honest. Now, Sinatra's position of power and her quest to build the paradise meant that she had to make some pretty horrible decisions, including not only overlooking but actively covering up the fact that the manufacturing of this paradise was killing off a whole bunch of construction workers. And this was something that one of the project managers on the site discovered when some of his workers and friends became extremely ill, and many of them, you could see the demographic that they came from. They started to get ill, and it was revealed that all these toxic fumes and substances were being released as they were digging under this flipping mountain. And instead of stopping this project, instead of even investing in more R&D to find a way to do this more safely in a way that wouldn't kill a bunch of construction workers, Samantha decided instead to just cover this whole thing up and fire the project manager, have him banned from the site, and probably used her influence and power and money to shut up any news sites who could talk to him. So when he tried to reach out to them, no one listened, and he just became just so angry and frustrated and terrified for his friends that he ended up trying to assassinate the president of the United States, inadvertently shooting Xavier. So that all came full circle, which was brilliant. That was just a brilliant piece of writing, and that whole first section of the finale was exceptional. But back to Sinatra. Back to Sinatra, that goddamn bitch. Back to Sinatra. The character hits home, okay? The character hits home for our current environment, our socio-political environment, and the divide in wealth and resources that we see blatantly every single day in front of us. So on that front, Dan Fogelman and co really hit the nail on the head with this character. And also, I have no choice but to shower Julianne Nicholson with as much praise as possible, because her performance, you know, as this character is so excellent. In fact, if I did have any critique of how this character was written, it would be that they didn't use her as much as they could have this season. As I said, it felt like they were holding back on the Sinatra storyline, especially in the final episodes, because clearly they have a lot that they want to do with the character in season 2, but that meant that season 1 Sinatra was kind of disserviced just a little bit. But man, like, what a villainous, horrible character that really struck a nerve with me, considering everything that's going on in the world right now, with all of the things that she's done. I mean, hello, Uncle Billy. Oh, I haven't even talked about Uncle Billy, but the death of Uncle Billy was just heartbreaking. The fact that they killed off the Winter Soldier like that the fact that they killed off Uncle Billy like that was just heartbreaking. Sinatra, you will never know a single day of peace. Also, that episode, up until the point of episode 7, that episode was one of the best episodes of the show. It was so brilliant. Again, going into the relationships that are established on the show, the one between Xavier and Billy, seeing how that was built up, the friendship, and then the fact that Xavier took him in as one of his family, only for Xavier to find out that this guy is a whole ass assassin. You know, this guy is a bad man who's done terrible things, but Billy really cared about Xavier and his family, his kids, and it was killing him that he had this secret. And so he wanted to tell Xavier, tomorrow, listen, you don't keep something like this until tomorrow. You say it on the spot. The second that he said tomorrow, I knew it was over. I mean, I knew it was over from the beginning, because I was like, oh, this is what we're gonna do here, huh? We're gonna have a character deep dive and only to kill them off at the end. Like, I could see what was going on, but the second that he said tomorrow, I knew it was over. I knew he wasn't making it out of this episode, okay? But listen. The point is, Sinatra might be God in paradise, but for all of the war crimes that she's committed, she ain't ever seeing the pearly gates. And that goes for her accomplice as well, Miss Jane, who genuinely did all of this so she could have a Nintendo. So she could, like, she actually just wanted the Nintendo Wii. Like, I was thinking, oh, maybe there's some sort of secret device or something in the Nintendo. No. Sis just wanted to play Wii Sports. Like, she dead ass just wanted the Nintendo Wii. And for Sinatra should have given it to her, because now look at the situation. Now she doesn't have a voice box. Wow. Now, guys, I want to get into every single detail of this series, because like I said, a time was had with this show. But instead, we're just going to quickly wrap up my thoughts on the characters by talking about the kids. All I have to say to the kids is, sit your asses down, please. Please. Those kids, especially Xavier's daughter, because his son was just chilling. He was doing as he was told, like a good boy. Xavier's daughter was out here with puppy dog eyes and her tongue out of her mouth following Jeremy. And to be honest, like, following Jeremy wasn't always a bad idea, because he was quite well protected. So it did actually come in handy on the day of the end of the earth. But sis was getting up all times when Xavier was telling her to sit down, and it was stressing me out. And for her to end up in Jane's house, eating her food, sitting on the same chair that Billy died in, I said, my sister, you need to listen to your father. Listen to your father. God damn it. He told you to stay downstairs in the underground vaults or whatever. So why don't you just listen? Look at the world that you're living in. Just listen, or that stressed me out too much, man. But with all of that being said, guys, I'm going to be giving Paradise an 8.5 out of 10. A time was had. Real television is back. I love to see it. But now that I told you guys my thoughts on Paradise, it's time for you guys to let me know what you thought of this series down in the comments below. Please be sure to subscribe to catch your videos coming up. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.